Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at a few extra modelling techniques and looking at Turbo Smooth. So the first thing we're going to do is look at how to create a circle in geometry using Editable Poly. Now this would be easy enough using something like a Boolean, but the issue with a Boolean is you're going to get a very poor topology. So just to demonstrate how to do that, if you make a box in your scene, like so, then add in something like a cylinder. So quickly rotate that 90 degrees, press A for angle snap. I'll just turn it on if the shortcut decides not to work. And we'll rotate this 90 degrees, place it here, then I'll rotate it on this axis 90 degrees as well. Now we want to make sure the cylinder goes all the way through the mesh, so let's push it through like so. And I'm also going to make sure that I've got the right sides in my cylinder. So you see here I've got, from this view, I've got a vertical slice through, but I don't have a horizontal. So if you set that to 16, you will see you get that. Or if you do 32, you'll also get that, and so on. So it's always good to make sure you've got the right number of sides in your cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to leave this on 16. And then I'm going to come over to Compound Objects, and I'm going to select the box and select Pro Boolean. Now if I go to Start Picking and select the cylinder, you'll see it actually cuts a perfect hole through the mesh. Very nice, you think, but not so nice when we look at the topology of this mesh. If we right click, go to Object Properties, turn off Edges Only, you'll see that's how it's modelled the geometry. I wouldn't recommend having geometry like that on any model. You get away with it on a render scene, but I wouldn't recommend doing that for a games model, even a static environment one. Now there are some ways we can try and fix a Boolean though. You'll see the main problem with it is, if we just turn off Edges Only again, or turn it back on even, the main problem with it is it's got all these points to cut in, but only a few points on the Edit Poly. So the first thing you can do is actually just add in a bit of geometry to the box to help it cope with the amount of geometry it's trying to match. So try just adding in a couple of loops around here, like so. And actually I'll just add in one more. And then we'll go back to the Boolean tool. So Pro Boolean, pick this and pick again. And actually it hasn't done a good job at all there. As you can see, it's just basically ignored the extra geometry I've added in. So I'm going to undo that. Let's convert this to an Editable Poly, and we'll try one last time. So start picking, pick there. Now for some reason it doesn't seem to like that. How about if we try, so undo again, and this time we'll just try a normal Boolean, and you can see you've got different operations you can use here. Now the first one we're going to do is extract B from A. You can see it listed down here, but you can do it the other way around, and so on. So we'll try pick operand B, and there we go. That's done us a better job this time, but there are still a lot of tries in our model. So that is the kind of main problem with Boolean. Yes, it does you a good job, you know, when you don't look at the model properly, and even if you render this, so I've got my render on the other screen, you'll see that actually it seems like it looks okay. But when you have lighting on it, or if you animate it, chances are this won't look so good in game. You can get away with having tries in an environment asset, but you definitely want to have as many tries as we had there, where they're all joining up to one point. Now you do have the option here of converting this to an Editable Poly, and if we just turn off Edges Only again, you could actually tweak this geometry. So you could come in and clean this up. But let's have a look at some techniques for, well, we'll leave that one in the scene. I'm just going to go to my layer manager here, add, so we'll call this Boolean example, add selected objects, and then turn this one back to the default. So, and then I can just hide this object. So what we're going to have a look at now is making a hole from a cylinder. So in our front view, I want you to make a cylinder and make sure it's got the same parameters I've got here. So I've got one side, got two cap segments, and I've got 16 sides. So I've got that horizontal and vertical slice here. Add an Edit Poly modifier on top of this and delete, delete all of those polygons there. Go to vertex mode, select a vertex in the center, hold Control and go to polygon mode and hit delete. Okay, so now what we can do is, all we need to do is straighten up these vertices around here. Now for a start we're going to work in symmetry mode because it's a lot easier than having to edit all the vertices. So we're going to delete one half, so we'll literally end up with half of one loop, and we're going to apply a symmetry modifier, which should work by default, but if it doesn't, try the different axes here, and if that still doesn't work, make sure if you come down to your mirror tab that your center is directly in the center. Then in the Edit Poly, come to vertex mode, and want to select the top three vertices, and you'll see you've got a Make Planar button here. So if you try hitting Y, that should straighten those up. Then select the bottom three here, and again hit Y, and then select the side ones, and this time we'll hit X. And there we go, we can see we've got a nice, perfectly quadded circle shape. Now of course if we wanted to, we could loop this and then hold Shift and drag it out, and we could again loop that and drag that out. And if you wanted to, you could even use the Make Planar tool. So you can see again, I haven't got these lined up, but if I select all those, and you can see it's Y, so if I hit Make Planar, try on this view here. Okay, forget that. Hit Z, we can line that up. Now we could even try bridge here, and there you go, you can see that actually works. So we've got a nicely rounded off shape. So move this one out of the way. You can see that's one technique for doing it. But what if we've already made our geometry? So we've already got made geometry and we need to cut a hole into this. Well, with this time I want you to start with a plane, and we're going to reduce the segments down to 0. So we'll literally just pretend, you know, we've come to make this model, and we realise there needs to be a circle cut in here. So I want you to come over to the Shapes tab and select a circle, and then place a circle in your model here. Now the only reason we're doing that is because we're going to use this as a reference for lining up our vertices. So we're going to change the colour of that to a nice dark colour, and turn off the grid with G. And then with this shape we're going to convert it to an Editable Poly and use Swift Loop to add some loops in. So this isn't the most kind of precise way of doing this, but I always make sure I've got a loop, the top and the bottom, both sides, and directly through the centre, like so. Now just as with this technique, you want to be clever here. There's no point doing both sides if you don't have to. I mean, you might have to for your model, but if you don't have to, then we can delete that side out. So in vertex mode, I can now line these up. So you can see it's not as precise, but it does the job. And if I want to add more points in, I could add a swift loop around here, 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 and here, and then I can just move those points out. Remember, if you want to be precise, a bit more precise, you can select the edges you want and just hit the connect button here and pull these points down and line them up. And then once you've finished, notice how again we've got a nice kind of perfectly quadded model here. We can symmetry this, add another edit poly on top, go to vertex mode and just weld these together. If the weld threshold is too low, just increase it a bit, plus, select the others and tick. And there we go, so we've got the same kind of shape again, just done in a slightly different way. Okay, so there is one more way of doing this. Yes, there is actually yet another way. And this way is by starting off with a rectangle. So we'll start off with a rectangle shape. So in the Shapes tab here, and then Rectangle. Then if you go to the circle and add in a circle, this time I'm going to do it slightly offset. Now, the important thing about this technique is to make sure that the shapes are completely flush with each other, like so. By making them in an orthogonal view like this, you know that's definitely going to be the case. So if I had made them in the perspective view, they probably wouldn't be flush on the same level. If they're not, let's just show you actually. So let's say I've made them like that. I'm like, oh god, I've got to make these directly flush. It's an easy way of doing it. Just select both models and the Align tool. Oops, sorry, that's wrong actually. Select one of the models, select the Align tool, and then hit the other model. And if you've got X, Y, and Z ticked on, you can just hit OK, and that they will now be lined up. Okay, so once you've got them lined up, select one of the shapes, doesn't matter which, right click and convert to Editable Spline, then go to Attach and attach those together. Now assign an Extrude modifier, and you'll see we've got the shape there. But obviously one problem with this is our edges are going to be all over the place. So if we just undo that, go back to when you had it as two shapes, select the circle shape, and if you go to interpolation, this is where you can actually define how many sides the shape has. If you turn off Optimize, you can see, just like Edit Poly, you can define the amount of sides your model has. So I'm going to set this to 2 and then convert this to an Editable Spline and attach it again. Oh, alright, it looks like I actually have to do the interpolation from within this spline. So turn off Optimize and turn it down to 2. It's actually really useful in a way. So apply an Extrude and turn this so it's bigger. Now you see I already had edges on, so you can see how it's trying to interpret the model here. But if we just turn edges off and apply an Edit Poly modifier, this is where we can tweak our shape. So I don't really like this technique, I'm just showing it to you anyway, for just in case one day you might need it. So now I can use the cut tool and just actually cut in the geometry like so. Now I might as well only do one side, there's no point faffing about doing the whole lot. I'll just do one side, delete all that extrude and then re-extrude it from my new geometry. Like this. and there we go. So now if I go to polygon mode, top view here, I can delete these out. A bit of an error there, should be able to remove that. And we can see again it's perfectly quadded, and I can just select all of these and extrude this out or in. Okay, so a couple of techniques there for creating circles in Edit Poly. One last little trick I'll show you actually. You see the geometry on here. Sometimes you'll find that that bridge tool I used before doesn't work properly. So one little trick you can do is actually select the bit, as long as you know you're going to clone it over, hold shift and clone it, then hit the flip button to turn the polys round so they're facing the right way. And then you turn on the snap here, you can use S on the keyboard for that, right click on it, make sure vertex is turned on only. By default it has grid points, but you want to make sure it's just vertex. Then if I just drag that, hold left mouse button and drag it to the corner, you'll see that's now perfectly attached. You'll need to weld it now, so go to vertex mode, Control A, and hit weld, and there you go, you've got a perfect shape. Okay, so that's some techniques for how to cut geometry in.